How nice to be confused with you, Ernie. Excellent. I prepared this set of slides well over a week ago, and a lot of really great stuff has been said today, which I think has moved us all along in our thinking. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through the first few slides and maybe slow down a little bit on the latter ones. I know that as part of the path forward, we're going to be thinking about what stewardship is and isn't. And so I couldn't resist taking a couple of minutes to emphasize a couple of points that, at least from my perspective, seem somewhat clear. One of the questions was whether stewardship is the means to the end, and I think it's one of a matrix of things. And although there are a lot of other activities that reduce the weight or the scale of our ecological footprint, those other things that need to be put in place won't be all that effective if we all don't have a stewardship ethic throughout society that allows us to put those constraints into place. So ultimately, in the end, stewardship really is the key. And I think our end goal is to keep society on the sustainable side of the ecological capacity balance to ensure that we're still around when sustainability is achieved. So the things I'm going to cover is a couple more thoughts on this definition. A couple of trends that I saw in reviewing some of the history of conservation in Ontario over the last couple of hundred years. Didn't go back as far as Ernie did. So on the definition side, in the past years, we went around the horn on whether stewardship is just voluntary or not. I thought we put that to rest. But Virginia Potter mentioned this morning, she made some passing reference to stewardship being voluntary, and so I think we still need to remind ourselves that stewardship is more than voluntary actions. Certainly ranchers, farmers, loggers, fishermen that are doing the right thing don't necessarily see themselves as volunteers. Stewards are the people who care for the resources. And although we've got a lot of different perspectives, we've got a lot of different reasons for being in the same room, that's all okay as long as we can visualize the higher level end goal that we're trying to get at. So stewards are also folks that have a high level of respect for each other and the diversity of what their focus is. And one of the challenges of working together, collaborating, is to build trust over time so that we can actually do stewardship on the scale that is going to have the impact that's needed in society right now. Sometimes there are different uses of the word, and I think we're still evolving our understanding of what it is, but where I come from, it's understood to be genes, species, and ecosystems. So I don't think that leaves out a whole lot of the natural world. So now to move on to the two trends that I was talking about. The two trends that I saw evolve looking at the history in Ontario involved the change of the way people have been getting involved in conservation over the last couple of hundred years, and also an evolution of the law. And we tend not to want to emphasize the law too much when we're talking about stewardship, but the law actually can be very supportive of stewardship, and that's the point that I want to make in these slides. In the next couple of slides, I'll mention some examples of the types of things that I saw happening in these trends over the last couple of hundred years. The examples are not all that important. What you want to watch for is what's the higher level message there of how things were evolving to give us the context of where we're actually at now. So, sorry, I've been neglecting to click my finger there. So the Canadian experience, most of us in this room are immigrants, or our parents were immigrants, or our ancestors were immigrants. In the 16 and 1700s, our cities were growing. It was mentioned before, we were heavily dependent on the surrounding natural resources. And one of the earliest records I found was back in 1762, when the locals realized that the grouse population had taken a major dive, and people were really concerned about grouse not being around. Well, now we know they cycle, but back then they didn't realize that so much. And so a delegation of individuals went and impressed upon the governor that we needed some laws to protect the grouse. So the first law that I'm aware of that protected wildlife in Canada was one that was enacted by the governor in Montreal in 1762. But later, in the 1800s, people also recognized that biodiversity was declining in significant ways. In Ontario, that's when we lost our elk, wild turkey. A lot of the larger mammals were disappearing from southern Ontario. Black bears and wolves, not that too many people missed them. Cougars disappeared. And then in the early 1900s, individuals realized that they could have more effect if they worked together, and clubs began to form. In the mid-1900s, these clubs again realized that they'd be more effective if they grouped together, so provincial and federal organizations were formed. Okay, I've jumped ahead here again. Okay. So in the last 30 years, where this has gotten us to is we've developed a lot of experience and we've evolved a lot of capacity and a lot of success in dealing with species recovery, water quality improvement, soil conservation. And in the next few days in the conference, you can watch for lots of examples of trends in how we've matured this capability of working together. In Ontario, we've got these programs that have been around for 15 to 25 years that are being very successful in involving the public. As Lynn mentioned, Ontario Stewardship and the Conservation Community Fisheries and Wildlife Involvement Program. Also, we have a couple of tax incentive programs. And in the last couple of years, we made some major steps forward with our species at risk stewardship. And I see many features of the successes from Alberta and elsewhere in Canada that have been rolled into our program. And although the stewardship program for species at risk has only been around a couple of years, it's already showing some significant success. So it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. In the 1800s, there was a lot of single-purpose initiatives. There were too few deer, so deer protection legislation was put in place. There were basically bag limits. And then as time went on, they added protection of habitat. Then they added groupings of species. And the interesting thing was it was always reactive. Just people, clubs, organizations, as time went on, put pressure on the government, and legislation was passed.